quick analysis of Casablanca. And I just wanted to share my take on this, as you all noted that doing a beat analysis is really a subjective assignment because everyone interprets things differently. It's just what it is. However, I didn't want you to approach this beat analysis like an actor would. Some of you may come from the theater and know that actors need to do their own analysis, character analysis, in order to really understand what it is that what the writer intended for the actors, what the characters' objectives are. And you as the writer, and here in our writing class for plays and for screenplays, you are dictating what are your characters' objectives, their actions, and the obstacles that are getting in the way of what they want. And I wanted you to look at this scene as a writer, not as an actor, to break down the story, the isolated story within this scene, because every scene is like its own little movie. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the characters in the scene have objectives in order to keep the tension rising, to keep the plot moving forward, and to keep conflict going, which is what every screenplay needs. Usually a scene begins with somebody wanting something and either not getting it at the end or getting it at the end. As we see, this is a great scene to break down because the objectives for each character are so clear. And beats, remember, are major moments of discovery where the characters are trying new strategies or new tactics to gain what they want, to get what they want, to gain their objective. Rick's overall objective for this entire screenplay, not just this scene, is to take care of himself and keep a low profile. And his objective for this scene specifically is to keep Ilsa from leaving him ever again. And the actions that support that are to deny her the rite of passage, right? The papers in order to leave Casablanca. To tease. He teases her with the papers, knowing now she knows he does have them right in front of her. To withhold. He's withholding those papers from her. To withdraw. To isolate. That supports his overall objective, which is to keep a low profile and just look out for himself, to take care of himself. But his obstacles are his own love for her, his undying love for her, and her physical presence there now in the room. She is an obstacle for him being alone because she's there physically with him. And in the past, when they first fell in love, he came to life. She brought life to him. So that memory is an obstacle for him to prevent him from keeping things from her, because as we'll see later, he does end up helping her and Victor Laszlo. Now, Ilsa's objective is to coax Rick in this scene into giving her the letters of transit and to flee Casablanca and escape to America, and to also save her husband Laszlo. Ilsa's actions in this scene are to beg, to coax, to guilt trip, to manipulate, and then force Rick's hand, in that order. Her obstacles, Rick's love for her is an obstacle because he wants to keep her there, and his anger at the same time at her betrayal is an obstacle because it's also keeping him from giving her what she wants. Again, in this scene, imagery and action as for example, the window. I looked up, and any time you're reading a screenplay or you're writing, always give purpose to your environment and the surroundings, and use imagery to support themes and also action that you're writing in your scenes. So a window, for example, is an opening. It's also it represents courage to change. It's a boundary that can be crossed. Windows also are symbolic of a window to the soul. Elsa gets right to Rick's soul, to his core, and she can look right inside to his person. She can see inside of him where no one else can, especially here in Casablanca, since he does keep so much to himself. Windows can also mean concealing what is on the other side. And isn't Rick concealing the letters of transit? Isn't he also concealing what it is he truly feels inside for Ilsa? He's covering it up with anger and bitterness. But later we know, too, something else that he conceals is that he's actually planned for Laszlo and Elsa to leave together instead of keeping her, keeping the agreement that she's going to stay behind with him. And he walks over to the window, and Elsa follows. That's symbolic, too, her following his lead, which she will do in the end, as we find out. Another prop that I thought was great imagery was the cigarette box, and that he went to get a cigarette out, and it was empty, and no relief, right? Cigarettes at that point help with stress or just tension, and he eventually gets one, but I thought the cigarette box being empty was symbolic of how he felt in that moment, empty inside. As far as the environment goes, in the beginning of the scene, the light from the hall reveals a figure by the window. Rick had just walked into a dark room. I think that's symbolic of how Rick feels inside. He feels dark inside, and the only light that was ever in his life was Elsa. And when the light comes on, she's there. She represents, therefore, life for him, even though she is the reason that life went dark for him. Imagery and dialogue, examples of that in our scene here. He says, "We're back in Paris." That takes us back. The screenwriter had provided flashbacks for us, but now that we know what happened in this line, we're taken back to that moment. We feel that moment with them right now in this moment, in this time that they're together in this room. "I'm not fighting for anything anymore except myself," Rick says. Again, that supports what my overall objective is for him, that he is just looking out for himself. "I'm not fighting for anything anymore except myself. You," she says, "are our last hope." Again, the imagery in that dialogue is he's the window of opportunity for her and for Laszlo to escape Casablanca. "I'm going to die in Casablanca." It's like he's going to die with these papers. He's going to die with this pain. He's going to lose his heart once again when she leaves, and he knows it. How does the world serve the action of the scene? Casablanca, if you look at it on the map, it's on the edge of the waters, where escape seems possible, yet it is so difficult to obtain. And isn't that how it is for all these people who are just waiting and waiting to leave Casablanca? They want the escape, and yet it's so hard. Casablanca, everyone's there stuck in isolation. They're alone in these. Rick is alone in his emotions. Just as the love between Rick and Elsa, love seems possible at the end of this scene, but we know that it's too difficult to obtain. Most of the actions, also in the world of our story, in the screenplay, most of the scenes take place at night. What does night represent? Darkness. The apartment in this scene is dark. Rick feels dark inside. So you see how the world of the story parallels with the actions of this scene and what the characters are feeling in this scene. But Elsa brings light. She brings it to Laszlo, to Rick, and to the idea of escape. She is the window. The window represents Elsa. And then another way that the world represents the action, or serves the action of the scene, is that Rick is taking revenge on the world. He's punishing everyone around him as well as himself, as long as he doesn't help anyone escape, doesn't give them the papers, and keeps them to keep Elsa there. Now, looking and breaking down the beats, I did what you all did, and I don't want to be redundant. I'm sure you all found the moments that I found, but I just want to point out the ones specifically that help support the objectives, that the overall objective for Rick, especially when she's begging him, so to beg, and he says, "I'll never be lonely," but we know that he is, so there's irony in that line. And a beat change. "You must give me those letters." She demands. That's her tactic, to demand. And he says, "I'm the only cause I'm interested in." Well, we know that he used to fight for a cause, but now the only cause he's fighting for is himself. And that supports what I said about his overall objective. Beat change. Richard, we loved each other once, if those days meant anything at all. So her tactic is to guilt. And he says, beat change. "I wouldn't bring up Paris if I were you." So he's admonishing her. He's to admonish, to put an end to this. And as we see, she keeps trying new ways. She tries manipulation, to belittle, to shame, to beg for mercy, to reason with him, and then a new tactic, to force, to bully, with pointing a gun at him. Now, I find this interesting. I skipped over a lot of beat changes, but I get down to this one, and she says to him, "For the last time, put them on the table," referring to the papers. Beat change. "I'll make it easier for you. Go ahead and shoot." So the objective, the action, is to test, to surrender to her. Beat change. Her hands drop down. She surrenders. She loses herself in him. They have surrendered in this moment to their love for one another. They've surrendered to the heated passion that was rising. All that tension that was rising in the scene was also very passionate. So they've surrendered to the heated passion now in the room from the battle they just had, the battle of wills, the battle of objectives. And finally, they've surrendered to a moment of passion, which is the kiss. Fabulous scene. And again, great example of looking at everything that you need to keep putting in your story, not just at the forefront to set things up, but scene to scene. As we said, keeping your overall objective in mind, keeping themes in mind, looking at the world that you've created, the world of the story, and how it serves the action of each of your scenes, looking at the environment and how the environment can serve your scene, looking at the dialogue and how the dialogue supports the imagery and the action and the intentions. All that needs to be working at the same time, cohesively, coherently, scene to scene. So I hope you enjoyed this assignment as much as I did, scenes that you all did, and I hope that you got something out of my analysis that you were not able to get out of your own. So thank you for letting me share.